In every generation, we inherit a set of beliefs about love, beliefs whispered by our culture, sculpted by our childhoods, and reinforced by every story we consume. But today, something has shifted. We're watching marriages fall apart not because people love less, but because they expect more. We stand in a time where women are encouraged to be fiercely independent yet deeply connected, empowered yet emotionally attuned, limitless in their ambitions yet patient in their partnerships. And in this storm of contradictions, relationships struggle to breathe. Couples are no longer falling out of love, they are drowning under expectations they were never taught to manage. We compare our partners to curated feeds, our marriages to imagined perfection, and ourselves to ideals no one can sustain. And so we blame love instead of examining the silent forces reshaping it. If we truly want to understand why marriages no longer feel happy, we must step into the deeper truth. The institution hasn't failed, our understanding of human connection has simply not evolved as fast as our desires. Today, we begin not by pointing fingers, but by asking better questions, the kind that invite us to see each other with fresh eyes and rediscover what it means to build something real in a world that is constantly teaching us to look elsewhere. The modern marriage is collapsing under the weight of expectations that no human being could ever consistently meet, and this pressure has quietly reshaped the emotional landscape between partners. For most of history, marriage was a practical arrangement, a partnership of survival, community, and shared responsibilities. Love was a welcome addition, not the foundation. But today, we ask marriage to be something entirely different, a source of passion, companionship, emotional healing, personal growth, intellectual stimulation, financial partnership, erotic fulfillment, and unwavering loyalty. We look to one person to give us what an entire village used to provide. And with such an enormous emotional load placed on the shoulders of a single partner, even the strongest relationships begin to bend under the strain. People enter marriage with the belief that their partner should intuitively understand their needs and anticipate their desires, forgetting that intimacy isn't built through mind-reading but through communication and effort. Modern love is driven by the idea that the right person should make everything effortless, yet relationships are inherently complex. When the illusion of ease fades, many begin to question the relationship instead of the expectation itself. The result is a quiet erosion of connection, where partners begin to feel that something is wrong simply because love doesn't look like the fantasy they were promised. In this climate, many women carry expectations shaped by empowerment narratives that celebrate self-sufficiency while simultaneously encouraging deep emotional connection. They want a partner who is both stable and exciting, reliable yet adventurous, sensitive yet strong. Men, on the other hand, often feel overwhelmed, sensing that no matter what they offer, it somehow falls short of the emotional and psychological ideal their partner has been taught to expect. And instead of discussing these pressures, both retreat into silence, creating emotional distance that feels like disinterest or rejection. Through social media, movies, and cultural messaging, we've absorbed the belief that love should be transformative, almost transcendent. But when two imperfect people try to create perfection while carrying their own histories, insecurities, and emotional wounds, disappointment becomes inevitable. Instead of acknowledging the unrealistic expectations set by modern culture, many blame their partner or the institution of marriage itself. And so the cycle continues, with relationships breaking under the crushing belief that one person should provide everything, be everything, heal everything, and fulfill everything in a world that only keeps demanding more from both of them. Many women today are navigating a deep and often unspoken conflict between independence and intimacy, and this tension sits at the heart of why so many modern relationships feel strained. On one side, women are encouraged to be self-sufficient, ambitious, and emotionally resilient. They are taught to build careers, protect their autonomy, and rely on themselves first. On the other side, they are told to be open, vulnerable, and receptive within their romantic relationships, to allow another person to see them fully and support them emotionally. These two narratives do not always flow together smoothly, and the friction between them creates confusion, pressure, and emotional distance that both partners sense but struggle to articulate. When a woman tries to honor both identities simultaneously, she often feels like she is failing at one or the other. If she leans into independence, she may fear she's becoming too distant or unavailable. If she leans into intimacy, she may worry she's losing herself or compromising her hard-earned autonomy. This internal struggle is rarely discussed openly because the world expects women to balance everything gracefully. They are supposed to be confident but not cold, strong but not intimidating, emotionally present but never needy. These impossible standards create a quiet exhaustion that seeps into relationships. When a woman feels torn between being self-reliant and emotionally connected, she may begin to question whether her partner understands her complexity or whether he can meet her somewhere between these identities without trying to diminish either one. Meanwhile, men often misinterpret this conflict as emotional inconsistency, believing their partner is pulling away or creating unnecessary friction. This misunderstanding leads to frustration on both sides, as each person feels unseen in their own struggle. The social messages women receive also shape their romantic expectations in profound ways. Independence is celebrated as strength, yet emotional longing is often framed as weakness, so many women wrestle with guilt when they desire closeness or reassurance. They may hesitate to express their needs out of fear that it contradicts the image of independence they've been taught to embody. Over time, this hesitation can create emotional gaps within the relationship, and even though the desire for connection remains strong, the ability to express it becomes tangled in layers of self-judgment and societal pressure. This internal conflict becomes even more complicated when a woman's partner also carries expectations, wanting her to be both open and emotionally available while also admiring her strength and autonomy. Without clear communication, both partners end up navigating assumptions rather than truth, and the relationship becomes a battlefield of misunderstood intentions rather than a space where vulnerability and independence can coexist naturally. Technology and constant comparison have reshaped the landscape of desire in ways previous generations never had to confront, and the consequences quietly infiltrate even the most committed relationships. We live in a world where connection is endless but intimacy is scarce, where attention is abundant but presence is rare. With every swipe, scroll, and notification, people are exposed to an infinite gallery of faces, lifestyles, and fantasy-driven relationships that seem effortlessly perfect. This creates a subtle but powerful sense of comparison, making partners feel more replaceable than ever. When you believe there are endless options, commitment starts to feel like a limitation instead of a choice, and curiosity about the world outside the relationship grows louder than the effort to nurture what's already inside it. Many women today are especially affected by this digital environment because they are constantly surrounded by content that tells them what they deserve, how they should feel, and what a relationship should look like if it were truly fulfilling. These messages can be empowering but also deeply misleading, feeding an idealized version of love that rarely matches the complexity of real partnership. A curated feed can make even healthy relationships seem boring, inadequate, or emotionally insufficient. The temptation to compare one's partner to strangers on the internet, men who say the right things, look the right way, or present a polished version of masculinity, creates a quiet dissatisfaction that grows slowly and silently. And because these comparisons are internal, they're rarely discussed, leaving the partner confused about the sudden emotional shifts and unmet expectations that seem to appear out of nowhere. At the same time, technology encourages constant validation through likes, comments, and digital attention, which can subtly become a measure of worth. When someone begins to rely on external affirmation, their partner's affection may no longer feel like enough. The relationship may feel comforting but not exciting, stable but not stimulating, and this contrast creates emotional dissonance that is difficult to reconcile. Partners begin to feel like they are competing not with actual people but with the illusions that technology creates: idealized bodies, exaggerated romantic gestures, or lifestyles curated solely for display. These digital dynamics also shape communication, making difficult conversations easier to avoid. Instead of addressing conflict or unmet needs directly, people turn to distractions. They immerse themselves in their screens, seeking escape rather than connection, comfort rather than confrontation. Over time, this avoidance chips away at emotional intimacy, creating a relationship where two people may physically share a home but emotionally live in separate worlds. The constant presence of technology doesn't just introduce new temptations, it rewires the way people think about connection, desire, and partnership itself, leaving modern relationships exposed to pressures they were never designed to withstand. Emotional literacy has not evolved at the same pace as our social environment, leaving couples ill-equipped to navigate the complexities of modern relationships. Today's world encourages people to pursue independence, ambition, and personal fulfillment, yet it offers very little guidance on how to communicate honestly, listen compassionately, or handle emotional conflict without withdrawing or attacking. Many individuals enter relationships with impressive professional skills but limited emotional tools, and this gap becomes painfully visible when intimacy demands vulnerability, patience, and self-awareness. Partners often assume they already know how to love simply because they feel strongly, forgetting that love without emotional skills often leads to misunderstanding, resentment, or disconnection. When couples lack the language to express their needs or the courage to reveal their fears, silence fills the space where intimacy is meant to grow. Instead of opening up about discomfort or insecurity, many people rely on assumptions, expecting their partner to interpret hints, mood changes, or passive signals. When those signals are misunderstood, frustration replaces curiosity, and blame replaces dialogue. Arguments that begin with small misunderstandings escalate quickly because neither partner knows how to pause, regulate their emotions, and return to the conversation with clarity instead of defensiveness. In these moments, emotional literacy becomes the missing piece, an ability not just to feel but to understand and articulate those feelings in a way that invites connection instead of conflict. Yet most people were never taught these skills in childhood or modeled them in adulthood, leaving them to navigate intimacy without a map. Another challenge is that many women today are encouraged to be expressive and emotionally aware, while men are often socialized to stay composed, controlled, or silent. This imbalance creates tension within relationships, where one partner may crave emotional depth while the other struggles to access or verbalize their feelings. The result is a painful dynamic. One person feels unheard, while the other feels overwhelmed or inadequate. Without the emotional tools to bridge this gap, couples drift apart not because they care less, but because they do not know how to meet each other where they truly are. Adding to this complexity is the modern pace of life. Constant distractions, overwhelming responsibilities, and digital noise pull attention away from the slow, intentional communication intimacy requires. When emotional issues are ignored or minimized, they accumulate quietly until the relationship feels heavy with unresolved tension. Couples begin to coexist instead of connect, speak out of habit instead of presence, and interpret each other's actions through the fog of unexpressed needs and lingering frustrations. Emotional illiteracy doesn't just create conflict, it prevents repair, leaving wounds open and connection fragile in a world where relationships require more emotional skill than ever before. The solution to the struggles of modern marriage is not abandonment or resignation, but a reimagining of what partnership truly requires, a willingness to see marriage not as a static institution or a fairy tale ideal, but as an evolving collaboration that demands curiosity, adaptability, and shared responsibility. Too often, couples enter marriage believing that love alone will sustain them, assuming that affection, desire, and commitment are enough to navigate the inevitable challenges. Yet relationships, like people, are living systems that require constant attention, intentionality, and care. When partners expect love to automatically resolve conflicts or provide fulfillment, they overlook the hard, ongoing work of building trust, maintaining connection, and negotiating differences. Reimagining marriage begins with the recognition that happiness is not a product of perfection but the outcome of effort, awareness, and mutual growth. This shift also requires a deeper understanding of human desire and emotional complexity. Partners must acknowledge that needs will change over time, that attraction and intimacy are not fixed states, and that dissatisfaction is not necessarily a sign of failure but an invitation to explore new ways of connecting. Modern marriages often fail not because people stop loving each other, but because they stop learning about each other. Curiosity becomes the antidote to complacency. By approaching the relationship as an ongoing experiment in understanding, couples can cultivate empathy, insight, and emotional agility that prevent stagnation. This doesn't mean every moment will be easy or seamless, but it allows the partnership to evolve in alignment with both individuals' growth, rather than remaining trapped in outdated expectations. Adaptability is equally crucial. Life is unpredictable, and the pressures modern couples face, from career demands to social comparisons to the influence of technology, require flexibility. Stubborn adherence to rigid roles or outdated ideals often leads to frustration and emotional distance. Couples who embrace change, who are willing to renegotiate roles, habits, and boundaries as circumstances shift, tend to build resilience in their partnerships. Adaptability also involves learning to navigate emotional challenges without blame, developing the skills to repair breaches in trust, and cultivating an atmosphere where vulnerability is met with support rather than judgment. These practices transform marriage from a static contract into a dynamic space for growth and intimacy. Shared responsibility is the final pillar of reimagined marriage. Both partners must recognize that sustaining connection, managing conflict, and nurturing desire are joint endeavors. When responsibility is unevenly distributed, resentment builds quietly, often under the guise of minor grievances. True partnership requires active participation from both sides, not only in practical matters but in emotional work, listening, reflecting, and engaging with each other's inner worlds. Couples who internalize this principle experience a deeper sense of equality and collaboration, which in turn fosters trust, safety, and fulfillment. By embracing curiosity, adaptability, and shared responsibility, marriage transforms from an impossible ideal into a living, breathing relationship capable of sustaining love in the modern world.